So I've never really had any experience in philanthropy, past work or otherwise. I just, always just kind of worked. Really, my incarceration led me to philanthropy. I was incarcerated and I wanted to take an education course. Of course, I found out the Pell Grant wasn't available. Luckily for me, my father could write the check and send me to school. And without him, none of my academic success would have happened. But once I got my education rolling, I discovered so many people just like myself would do the same thing, but they didn't have the father to write the check, the Pell Grant wasn't available, and they were just kind of left on their own. So seeing that need, I started the Prison Scholar Fund, but I had to learn what a 501c3 was, how to write grants, that whole process. So I really took a deep dive right away into nonprofit work. The Prison Scholar Fund is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We provide funding and programs for incarcerated students. Now that need happened because the Pell Grant was taken away back in 1994 during the war on drugs. So without the opportunity or funding for prisoners to take educational courses, they're really just left on their own. One interesting inspirational figure I met was Phil Zimbardo when I was incarcerated. He did the Stanford Prison Experiment. So I actually corresponded with him when I was incarcerated. It was really kind of neat when he wrote back, and we had this, this little pen pal connection. And then when I actually got to Stanford, I went and visited him, and he had some really great work on the nature of evil for the Stanford Prison Experiment, and now he's kind of researching what makes people good. And kind of like the idea is, everyone can have compassion, but to add action to the compassion is what really makes a person, effective. So if we had all the resources, or a good chunk of the resources, we could really launch our UW program. Now the UW program is a partnership with the University of Washington for an online program. Microsoft is doing randomized control trials on it, and we're also partnering with the Department of Corrections. Now the University of Washington is kind of expensive, and to have enough people in the program for significant research data, we need about 200 people. Now of course, 200 people at $15,000 a head, the whole program is about a $15 million program. So not only do we need the money to actually run the program, but we also need capacity building dollars to hire the staff, to raise the money, to have a sustainable organization. A couple examples of really the obstacles, it really just comes down to funding and capacity building and really human capital. It's like, as a new organization, we're kind of in startup mode, so we have to build a board, which is really tough to attract the right kind of people on the board with the talent and the capacity for board leadership. And then when we want to run the programs, we have a really great vision, but to translate the vision into actually action requires funding. And there's different sources of funding. There's foundations, there's individuals, there's corporations. So you need to develop all these revenue pipelines, and that's really tough starting from zero. To build a donor base of people from zero, and then reach out to foundations. And of course you need funding for hiring professionals to do the work. So until all that happens, you got to be really scrappy and just make it go. So there's definitely challenges, but it makes it fun. Yeah, so we've historically, since 2006, we've supported 114 people. Now the demand is really off the chart. We have thousands and thousands of letters that come in, seeking support. So we really can only support a few of them. But out of the 114 people we supported initially, 74 got released, and out of the 74 that got released, only 3 recidivated, went back to prison. So that's pretty good compared to national recidivism rates of 68%. Even though we recognize there's probably some bias selection in there, that's where the randomized control trials with Microsoft comes along. We really want to drill down on what exactly works. So probably just my incarceration and success in school is really what led to my ability to take the lead. I mean, I had this opportunity that was pretty much given to me, and what did I do to deserve it before it was given to me? Pretty much nothing. So just seeing how fortunate I was to have that opportunity and other people who did the exact same thing that I could, I was lucky, but luck has pretty much no role in rehabilitation. So I just really wanted to let other people have the same opportunity I did. Short of my kitty cats jumping on my head, it's probably really panic, because running a nonprofit, just like any other startup, there's some dark days and some not so dark days. So you really got to push through, just keep it going, and sometimes it's really tough. So what really helps is just to get out of the bed and, you got to hit it. Like every entrepreneur, I think, that's successful, they have to be laser focused, they really have to drill down on what they're doing, and they just have to have a vision that they won't quit on. That's not always easy. So you just have to, you know, maybe be a little just crazy about it.
So Treehouse is an almost 30-year-old nonprofit organization. Our mission is giving foster kids a childhood and a future. And our roots were in filling gaps for kids in foster care because the system simply does not fund everything that kids need once they come into foster care. I've been at Treehouse 22 years. And what I'd say in the field of human services in general, we have been challenged to change from doing good to having measurable impact. So there's a man who works for us at Treehouse now, whose life was very chaotic as a young boy. Parents who are involved in criminal behavior, drug abuse, and I mean, let's talk about roots, honestly tremendously impacted by poverty. What's beautiful about this young man is, so he was in the foster care system, Treehouse met him. He joined a program that we then had that was tutoring when he was in 6th grade and grew up in Treehouse, but also in a greater community of care throughout his adolescence. And he was writing a column for the Mockingbird Times because he was working at Mockingbird Society at the same time, chronicling his senior year in high school, and we were serving him at Treehouse. It became clear to me that the organizations were not talking to one another and that we were missing things he needed. And so he taught me about that, about how we need to coordinate better and stop just focusing on what we do individually. So we're in the midst of trying to raise $4 million from the legislature and another $1 million philanthropically so that we can expand really around Spokane, around Tacoma, Yakima, and Everett. So $5 million would do that. Where we started was youth in foster care graduating on time in the high 30% range. Since we've been working statewide, we've improved to about 45% for all youth in foster care. Here in King County with the Graduation Success Initiative, we're up to 68% on time. Probably more importantly, at 5 years, we're measuring 82% graduation. The context of education in human services are very, very complex. So we position ourselves to try to make each of those systems do its best work for kids in foster care and do what is uniquely ours to do. Because of all the complexity and all the challenges those two big systems are taking, we have to push into them sometimes more than we'd really like to challenge them to do better, to support them actively and advocate for them, say in the legislature or in the community conversation. And that takes time away from the work of really understanding what will help foster youth succeed in those two systems better. Exceptional leadership really is based in knowing oneself and continually growing in that knowledge. I think it is based in compassion, first for yourself and then for other people. And I think it is a capacity and ability to set a vision, inspire others to be engaged in it, and identify their place of contribution in that vision. I think there is a desperate need to identify common goals and our unique contributions to get there and to coordinate among ourselves and to support one another. I try very hard to see those opportunities and support others doing good work. So this is the Treehouse Warehouse. It is a remarkable collaboration of community, and we're sitting in it after about a 6-month project of remodeling it that is an example of what happens at Treehouse every day. So our 5-year graduation rate was 78%, 80, and now 82%. 82% is the same rate that all Washington high school students have as an extended graduation rate statewide. So we're very, very pleased with that impact. Our wealth of talent and willingness can come together more robustly so that this does not have to be a community with the terrible outcomes that we see for poor people and poor people of color. And I'm hungry for that conversation and for us to do better. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm Jody Nishioka, and I'm the Executive Director of Wayfind. So Wayfind's a nonprofit. We're a statewide organization that provides pro bono or free legal services to community organizations, and that includes nonprofits, and it includes small, low-income folks who have small businesses, so microenterprise businesses as well. We don't do any litigation, so that means that we help them with all of their foundational needs, like incorporation, getting their tax-exempt status, writing contracts, employee handbooks, helping them draft governance policies, those types of things that all corporations, nonprofits, and for-profits need to run well, but for our clients, they don't have the resources to hire attorneys, and so we provide that for free. In the nonprofit world, we help a real statewide. We help a real variety, but we focus our marketing and letting folks know about our work. We focus on nonprofits that are serving low-income communities, so and marginalized communities. We also, on our microenterprise side, they have to be low-income folks. So we only help low-income small business owners. So we don't do litigation. That means if a nonprofit or a microenterprise is being sued or wants to sue someone about a dispute, we don't do that type of service. What I've learned over the course of time is, in my career, is that I'm really interested in working in communities and with communities and empowering, doing work that empowers nonprofits and communities, and that's where my interest in philanthropy is. What kind of change? And so what comes to mind is not just having funding for Wayfind to expand our services, but really having resources for all the the main partners that we work with. For example, even, it's not just, it's financial resources, but in-kind resources as well. We are very fortunate to have office space here at Perkins Coie in a beautiful office building with a lot of wonderful amenities. But the space is limited here. We don't have unlimited amount of space here. We only have a couple of offices, and Perkins Coie is not in a place, they don't have a lot of extra space for us to continue to grow. So we're going to be having, as we grow, we're going to have to look for other office space that we will likely have to pay for. And so it's not just cash resources, but it's resources like that. We, again, so fortunate to be here at Perkins Coie, and they're great. In terms of resources, we're getting short of space if we're going to continue to grow. And of course, we'd need funding to add staff. So it's always about resources. So the highlights for me and what really brings me joy in this work is connecting with others. And I find this both, like, I tell my kids this all the time, the real secret to a happy life is having authentic communication, connections with other people and relationships. And I find that to be really true in my work experience as well. One of the things that's most had the impact for me are the clients. And when I first started out as a lawyer, I started at a large firm doing corporate work, and it really wasn't very fulfilling. I worked representing immigrant and refugee women who are domestic violence survivors and their children in their domestic violence. And there was, there's certainly specific clients that I can remember, but it's really all of those clients and their stories that really tugged at my heart. I mean, I really felt like I was making a difference for them in their lives. I was helping getting them safe and their children. And that early experience really is what got me to do social justice work. What I really love my job. I love being the executive director of Wayfind. Part of being an executive director is really interesting because it has so many facets and it requires a lot of different skill sets. And I'm not saying that I'm good at all of them. I'm better at some than I am at others. Well, I think first of all, authenticity, bringing your true self. But what comes with that is this underlying, you have to know yourself. You have to know what your values are. You have to do some self-reflection on what your strengths and your weaknesses are, what your values are, and also, again, your positionality. Like if you don't do that work and you're not aware of what you bring in terms of, what privileges you bring, and what positionality you bring, then you can't really be authentic.
The Equity in Education Coalition is Washington State's largest public policy research organization created by, and staffed by people of color. So we started in 2012 in an effort to push the legislature and be a resource to the legislature when it came to education and closing the opportunity gap for kids of color. And we come at education from a different perspective from other organizations. We look at not just what creates the achievement gap, but also what creates the opportunity gap. I have actually been working in the nonprofit sector since I was 15. My high school required 420 hours of volunteer service to graduate. Since I graduated high school, I went to a Jesuit college in which volunteerism was a part of our core values and beliefs. And then I started working in nonprofit almost immediately. So have always worked with philanthropy in some way, shape, or form. So two different things sort of stand out. In terms of education, I was privileged. I'm what people will call the privileged poor. My parents are pretty middle income, low income, but we were lucky enough through hard work to send me to private school for high school and for college. That privilege has always been with me, that understanding that I know social norms that a lot of my colleagues, friends, and family don't know. And also working in nonprofit, I've always worked for social justice organizations. I think the highlight for the EEC and our work has been that we are now considered experts when it comes to working around equity, around social justice, and more specifically around undoing institutionalized and systemic racism. Our lens is very focused on making sure that we're not recreating or perpetuating cycles of oppression, and we are very conscious of being and modeling being an anti-racist organization. Improvement, I think we're still a young organization. We're 5 years old, so there's a lot of improvement that we can achieve, and really understanding that there are some people that really don't understand why equity matters. I think exceptional leadership is humility, understanding learning curves, also being open to growth, and recognizing that at some point we grow older and there's that moment where we're no longer youth and we enter into elder, that I think a lot of leaders don't always anticipate and wait for. I am in love with what I do. It is an amazing, amazing journey that's filled with hope, it's filled with anxiety, it's filled with frustration, but at the end of every day and at the beginning of every day, I know that there are 800,000 kids and families that don't know that I'm working for them, but I'm doing the best that I can so that they can get the education that I was privileged enough to get through really, really hard work from my parents. And it shouldn't be a privilege to get an excellent education, it should just be the norm. So our impact has been in really getting people who normally would never think about racial equity to think about it from the very beginning, or at least understand that when we talk about racial equity, we're not calling people racist, or it's not personal. It's been really amazing to hear white privileged men talk about race like it matters, because it suddenly has. And it's been really great to see so many moving parts finally start moving in the right direction. But now we want to do something bigger. We want to make sure that each and every child gets the programs that they need, and that we're a state that fully funds education based on where students are on their achievement level and not based on what zip code they live in.
So my name is Marcos Martinez, and I'm the Executive Director here at Casa Latina. We are a nonprofit organization that serves mainly Latino immigrant, day laborers, and domestic workers. We primarily connect workers with employment opportunities as well as educational opportunities, and we also engage in community organizing. So Casa Latina is based here in Seattle and King County, and what we find is that the Latino community is growing and it's spreading. People are coming to Casa Latina to look for employment from further and further away, and also to take advantage of the other services that we offer. And so what we find is that there's a need for us to really think about offering our services in farther away places. And part of what we're looking at is the demographic changes in the Latino immigrant community, and looking at how we might address the needs of the community in the future in the next 3 to 5 years, and what that means in terms of our programming, and whether we should consider opening satellite offices, and how we can best continue to meet the needs of the community in the future. I used to work in public radio, and although my work in public radio was mainly in public radio news, we had our twice-a-year on-air fundraising campaigns. But then, I think that so much changed in the field, and there was a lot of education that was done to help us think differently about fundraising and how we were really giving people an opportunity to contribute to something very valuable and offering people a chance to be part of something by supporting it with their dollars. And so that really changed, for me, that really changed my attitude about philanthropy. We're members of a community, and we should depend on each other to support the things that matter to us. And so much of it is based on relationships. And when we participate in community and we get to know each other, and we get to know each other's families, and we get to know the things that matter to each other and to each other's families, then of course that motivates us to want to support the things that matter to each other. And I think that that really forms the basis for a lot of philanthropy. The skills that I had developed working in public radio were somehow a perfect match for running a small nonprofit organization. And so it just went from there. So one of the things that workers are always asking us for is more skills training. So if we had the resources, I think one of the things that would be great to implement is skills training in construction areas. That will allow people to be able to go out and earn more money. We're interested in helping people to get more jobs and get better jobs. So we've been working with community members in a variety of areas, such as to deliver information about immigration reform, or in other areas such as our home health aid program. And that has been really successful. It's also part of our leadership development work that we're doing. So we have a women's leadership program here at Casa Latina, and it's been really successful. Casa Latina is a wonderful organization that provides critical services in the community. This is such an important organization here in Seattle, in the Puget Sound region, and I feel really privileged to be able to lead this organization, and that's what motivates me. I feel a great responsibility to be the executive director of Casa Latina. I feel like this is such an important organization, and I want to do my absolute best at my job here, because there's so many people depending on me to do that. And so that's what motivates me to get up and to show up here and do the absolute best that I can.